everyone. I'm so thrilled to be among you, and I am just honored with that presentation. To be known by the leaders in this industry is so special, and I'm so grateful that I get to share a part of me today. And I got to tell you, I'm a little nervous because I like to do what Jarrell does. I like to put it all together and lead the ship and help other people get to their place. And I'm going to step outside of my comfort zone today and invite you into some deep places in my heart because I feel like there's been a transformation in me throughout my pregnancy movement journey. And it started in April 2019 when I came to my very first Heartbeat International Conference. Now, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've spent a lot of time in nonprofit work helping vulnerable populations, and I was coming from the anti-trafficking world. And anybody who can appreciate that space knows that everybody and anybody wants to get involved with that. It's very sparkly. We all know underground, it's a very dark place. But for the outside world, it's something very attractive. And when God took me from that position to our local pregnancy center, I was shocked. I was awakened. And I felt like for 18 months I spent my time in boot camp. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that journey because maybe you're like me, maybe you're not. But growing up, we didn't talk about politics or religion in ways that I now talk about politics and religion because of this movement. We didn't talk about abortion. We didn't talk about pro-life, pro-choice. I only knew our pregnancy center to be a social service organization that helped me when I was serving teen moms, helped me when I was serving moms who needed extra services. I didn't understand all the nuance, and so I was really overwhelmed when I first took step into this space. And so it was at this conference in 2019 that I finally really got it. I started to begin to understand what God had in store, what he had been cultivating, and what was maybe stirring in my spirit. And so this topic today about breakthrough is really near and dear to my heart, and the marketing team's gonna hate me for doing this, but who looks at this word and sees the UGH at the end? Right? Like, who sees that? They're gonna hate me for doing that. But isn't that true about breakthrough? It's like, right? Like, we all love sitting in the breakthrough, but the actual process of going through it is really difficult, right? Expanding our understanding, our perspective, the process in which we experience that is sometimes pretty arduous. Right? We have to break with a belief system. We have to break with a previous understanding that many of us grow very comfortable with, right? And so I want to take you on my journey today, helping maybe break through in you your own journey, maybe journey with family, maybe journey with your team, maybe journeying with your board. Perhaps journeying with this challenge that's before you, that you are starting to see that there needs to be different services inside your center. Maybe you need to make that money to get to the next place. And I want to encourage you with my story today because I believe that I am one of your clients. My story emulates so many of the places and spaces that our clients travel. And one thing that I learned sitting in this room in 2019 was that we needed to see our work differently. That no longer were we just serving that pregnancy test, that ultrasound, the diapers, our baby boutiques, but we needed to get in the hearts and minds of the women entering into our centers. We needed to get into the hearts and minds of the men coming into our centers. We need to get in the hearts and minds of the grandparents and the families and the social service providers and the pastors and the priests, and you know the list goes on. But how do you do that when we only have 3 minutes or 20 days or 6 months? We have to appreciate the person, not just the symptom. that's coming in. So I want to take you back to my journey. I was born in the early 80s. I'll be 40 this year, actually in less than a month. And I was born to two parents who were college educated, owned their own businesses. My dad was a pilot. And for all intents and purposes, we looked like the perfect family. You know, the two kids, the two dogs, the white picket fence. We didn't have that. But it looked good on the outside. What you don't see in this picture is generations of alcoholism, generations of codependency, generations of marriage and remarriage, generations of low self-esteem, generations of so much financial issues. So it didn't surprise many of the people in my family when at 9 years old, my parents went through this horrendous divorce in which they set my sister and I aside and only were able to see what they could in that moment, and that was their pride, their ego, their dysfunction. And so for 4 years, they fought each other tooth and nail. Guardian ad litems, divorce attorneys, thousands and thousands of dollars, friends, inappropriate conversations with my sister and I, 3 different schools throughout middle school, all because my parents, whatever this perfect picture was, were fighting those demons inside of them. They didn't understand what was happening, but all while my sister and I were absorbing all of it and trying to create meaning out of something that was horrific to us. Right? We didn't understand the conversations. We didn't understand why we would spend this time with dad, this time with mom. Dad would be drinking. Mom would try to pretend everything was okay. They'd talk crap about each other. We didn't understand. What we did understand, though, is that we believed that it was all our fault. We began to own our parents' dysfunction. And we began to create belief systems much like you in here, to make sense of it all. And my belief system became, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough for my parents to stay together. And that was my trauma. There's other traumas in here: sexual abuse, physical violence, death of a sibling, death of a parent. The list goes on, substance abuse. But for me, in that moment, starting in 4th grade, I believed at some level I was responsible for the dysfunction of generations before me. And I began to absorb that. So it wouldn't surprise you that for the next decade and a half, I turned everywhere else for love and attention. My parents were emotionally unavailable. They were doing the best that they could, but they had yet to start a healing journey. And so what did I do? And what do most of us do in that? What do our clients do? They begin turning to the outside world for validation, for affirmation, for love and attention. I joined a gang in 8th grade. By the end of 8th grade, I had tried every drug I could get my hands on. I was doing everything I could to numb the pain. You can see this 13-year-old girl, she was so angry. Is that not our clients? It's full of all these emotions that they don't understand, and they are just trying to survive. I was just trying to survive. I didn't understand what I'm telling you now. I just knew that I was hurting, and I didn't feel safe in the place that I was supposed to feel safe in. So when I started getting attention from gang members and boys and other people that were not making good choices, it felt really good. Right? Part of me knew that what I was doing did not align with what I wanted to be doing. But I now understand that I was so moved, the adrenaline in me, the addiction in me, the need for love and attention, I was so moved by those experiences that I kept going back. I kept wanting more and more and more. And every time I'd go back, I'd make an even bigger dysfunctional choice. So this only led to years of dysfunction for me. Except after trying all those drugs, it wasn't enough for me. It wasn't satisfying. My drug of choice became men. Men were who validated me. If they thought I was pretty, if they thought that I was whatever, I felt good. And I would become a chameleon to every one of their needs, their experiences. And so at 15, I began having sex and doing everything to satisfy the void inside of me and what the world told me I needed to be doing. Years of birth control, plan B, right? Somehow, though, those early years of learning to cover up my experiences allowed me to find my way to college graduation. And this picture is really important to me because it's going to touch on some of the breakthroughs I had in this room that day. You know, on the left side, you see a graduate of college. Woo, she did it. I had honors in college. But really, the girl on the right side was living inside of me. I did not walk with integrity. I was not who I was everywhere I went. I was whoever you wanted me to be wherever I went. Is that not our client's story? Struggling with those insecure places, lack of value, lack of identity. And this picture is so important to me because as the Teen Parent Program Director in 2010, my goal was to get every one of those girls graduated, make sure their kids did not die of SIDS, right? Make sure that they had good child care, that they were hitting their developmental milestones. And I'm not saying those aren't good. But what I quickly learned from my journey of healing, and fast forward to the pregnancy center days, serving 3 of those women my first week on the job, their lives were tenfold what they were when I was working with them as the Teen Parent Program Director. Legal issues, foster care, domestic violence, more poverty, legal issues, child death was in one of their stories. This was the picture of our clients that I could see. They had graduated high school. They were set up for success. Their kids were 3 years old and hitting every one of those milestones. Yet inside of them was living this broken, chaotic, damaged, dysfunctional little girl. And for those men in here, little boy. And I didn't do anything. I didn't know to do anything with that part of them when they were in the Teen Parent Program. I didn't understand how important mental health services were. I didn't understand how important it was to get to the root of what was going on. I was so fixated on ensuring that they graduated, and so was the school. Right? How can we compare that? Get so fixated on saving that baby, so fixated on accomplishing that goal. But are we asking those questions? Are we creating rapport? Are we connecting with the little Lisas inside? I wasn't. And I was convicted in this room in 2019 to do something about it. So we wrote a book called Unraveled Roots. Some of you might know it. It's on Bright Course. Because I wanted to help my team. I wanted to make sure that we had something that gave us an option to dig deeper into the lives of those that we have an opportunity to serve. I didn't want them to just come in and go through some education programming, which is really important. Please don't hear what I'm not saying. But I wanted to take an opportunity that I hadn't taken in the Teen Parent Program and multiply our efforts. Because I knew that the attachment to that baby now, I knew that the lifestyle that they lived at home, I knew that the way they saw themselves and experienced the world was far more important than getting a degree. Now, that might be anti everything the world says, because we need options, we need to make money, we need to survive. But what about those repeat behaviors? What about the dysfunction? So I kept going on this journey for 10 years, found myself in a marriage, had our first child. And when I was 27, I found myself unexpectedly pregnant. My husband and I were getting divorced. I was learning about sex addiction and porn addiction and my own codependency. I was first learning about my dad's alcoholism and how that had just wrecked my life and my understanding of what men should be and how they should treat you and all of the things. And so at 27, had I not been more fixated on my pregnancy, I would have likely walked into our local Planned Parenthood. I was so fixated on how my husband could do the things he could do to me that I became Detective Lisa. And I started trying to find out how to solve him and fix him and change him and how could he do this to me. I'd spend hours looking up videos that I had seen him involved in and all sorts of things, all while growing a baby inside of me that I was not connecting to because I was more connected to my drug of choice. And so with a 9-month-old, I think this was actually her first birthday, with my 1-year-old Riley in tow, which, by the way, it's hard for me to admit this today because I love her deeply, but I didn't know how to connect to her. I did not know how to connect to her. The only thing that had ever been reflected to me was a mom who did and put a pretty picture. I didn't know how to emotionally connect to my daughter. It was the hardest year being awakened to that truth. And now here I am pregnant with a second daughter. My drug of choice is out the door. I can't go back out to the bars and hang out and do the things that I always had done. I was pregnant and fixated on saving this marriage that was really hard to save. So here I am waking up every day at 4 a.m. It's like he did not want me to sleep. It's like I had to start the day with him every day. And I began to experience his love in the most radical way, in a way I never experienced. And it took being pregnant and being separated from my drug to be able to experience his love and his embrace. And the people that came around me during this time in my life, amazing people. And do you know who those people were? A lot of them were the teen moms I was serving during this time. The community of survivors that I was surrounded with. The support services that were coming into the teen parent program, including Pregnancy Solutions. The pregnancy center I would serve years later. So I ended up walking through divorce and raising these 2 little babies. My daughter, Sydney Grace, is my little baby in this picture. I named her Sydney Grace because I knew that I was going to need every bit of God's grace to raise her in the midst of my own dysfunction. I knew something had to change, but I don't know that I knew what it was. I don't think I had a clear picture of what it could be. It just felt really hard. It felt really hard to love these 2 little girls, and I didn't know how to love. So moving through this, my mom and I found some healing. And here we are on the left side. She was a big part of my journey. As I was walking through my divorce, she found herself in a legal dynamic with her then husband, who was facing pedophilia charges. Look at the history there, right? The patterns of behavior that follow us until we break them. She began walking through boundaries classes and healing, and we looked at each other, we go, man, We're more alike than we are different. What the heck? It was scary. Scary and beautiful. But I look at this picture as a reminder to me that my mom only had the paradigm she had. On the left-hand side is my grandma, who had multiple marriages, who helped her in times of need, had her own alcohol issues. And here my mom is doing the very best she can under the paradigms that she's been reflected. But together, it was a beautiful journey. It took a lot longer than I wanted it to. And that was really real. And it still is. Like, just because, healing has entered our world and I have a strong relationship with God and I have a strong support system now, it doesn't mean that the little girl in me doesn't show up. She's been in my head since last night, telling me I don't deserve to be up here, right? I don't have a story to tell. Who am I to think that this is important? How many of us can relate to that? If we really got real with ourselves, what breakthrough is it that you're seeking this week? What breakthrough is it you're seeking for your pregnancy center this week? What breakthrough for your board or the services or that one particular client that if you got out of your head and did it anyways, what would happen? If we started to change the paradigms, helping our clients understand, at least us understand that they have paradigms. And it's not what's presenting on the surface that we're most concerned with, it's what's underneath the surface. So fast forward, this is my family today. My husband and I got married in 2014. We blended our families together. And this is us just last maybe 6 months ago. We've added Brooks to our family. We're so grateful for the journey. I can't believe I'm even still married because my go-to is to run away from things. My go-to is to escape. And we have had to travel and unpack a lot of baggage to be standing or sitting in these pictures together. But I told you that this conference had a really significant impact on me for different reasons. As I was driving to Jacksonville last year for this conference, my husband called me. He said, "There's one more thing I need to tell you that I haven't told you." And he said, "Lisa, I had an abortion when I was 20. And I never thought I would tell you. I never thought I'd tell anybody." We had been married and together for maybe 8 or 9 years at that point. He had walked this entire journey with me, sat at dinner conversations, donor conversations, board conversations, carrying the weight of this story. And in a moment of enlightenment and release, he called me as I was driving the back roads to get to our conference last year. And he said, I was 20 years old. My coach, he was in Division I baseball school, my coach told me if I had had this baby that my MLB career would end and that his relationship with his girlfriend would end. And so he helped afford them the ability to have an abortion at 20 years old. Everything he made, that deal he made with himself that day to go to the MLB and have this loving relationship ended in that moment, he said. Drinking got heavier, life got more difficult. Everything that he had thought he was making the moves for changed in him. He was going to carry that to his grave, like so many people we know in here. So many people are carrying that secret. I was in a recovery meeting the other day, and he said there's 2 things that people never talk about: pedophilia and abortion. And so I am thrilled to be among you on this journey with you and here to really help you understand how to take this abortion healing thing to the next level. Because there's a person missing from our picture. And that person has taken with him a part of my husband's heart that he is trying like heck to heal from, but it has been really hard. And so many people can relate to that experience. And without healing, what do we know? We pay it forward, right? We encourage the next generation unknowingly often to repeat those patterns. Terry Baxter from H3 Helpline says, second to an ultrasound is someone's experience healing after abortion as a motivation for helping somebody make a different decision. But for you in here, and I've sat in your shoes, how many of you is abortion healing 7th on the list? Or maybe not even on the list? How many of you are expecting those people to come to your office, come to your space? Are you entering into places where you would encounter my husband? Where you encounter my best friends, my sister? Or are you expecting them to come to you? I know I'm in a room full of leaders today, and I know this can be convicting. But what if our conversation around a social service table changed? What if we began to bridge that? What if we began to offer different ways of healing? What if we had referrals to clinicians and secular healing opportunities? Because that's what we know our clients need right now. My hope today is that you would be encouraged to get through that part of this breakthrough that we're in right now. We have women stopping on the side of the roads coming from their destination abortions, having their children laboring, delivering in their vehicles. How are we going to reach them? In their bathrooms, in their showers. And it is our hope at Support After Abortion that we get into the family line, that we start this healing journey in the way that my mom started her healing journey and affected change in my life, and that I'm hoping to continue to instill in my children's lives. We've got to change family trauma and dysfunction and start the healing in new and different ways. So I'm thrilled to be with you today. Thank you for having me. And we are here to help you and serve you. And Jarrell and the team, thank you for having me. And I wish you a blessed rest of your conference.